Another day, another story. History of Russia. Why Russia is the world's largest country? Let's start from early history: Mongol rule, rise of the Tsardom, Imperial Russia, Revolution and Soviet era, post-Soviet Russia and Russia in 21st century. Before continuing, like, share and subscribe to this channel for more videos. Part 1. The early history of Russia dates back to prehistoric times when the region was inhabited by various indigenous tribes and early civilizations. The timeline of early Russian history is characterized by the emergence of Slavic tribes and the establishment of the medieval state of Kievan Rus. The Slavic tribes were the early inhabitants of the region that is now Russia. They settled in areas along the rivers, such as the Dnieper, Volga, and Don, and engaged in agriculture, fishing, and trade. The Slavs were organized into tribal units and had their own customs, traditions, and languages. In the 9th century, the Viking tribes, also known as Varangians, began to make their way into the region. The Viking warrior Rurik is considered the founder of the Rurik dynasty, which ruled over Kievan Rus. Rurik and his descendants established their rule over the Slavic tribes and created a federation of tribes known as Kievan Rus. Kievan Rus was a medieval state that emerged as a federation of Slavic and Viking tribes in the 9th century. The city of Novgorod, located in present-day northwestern Russia, became an important center of Kievan Rus. Novgorod was a thriving trade and cultural hub, with strong ties to Scandinavia and Byzantium. Under the rule of the Rurik dynasty, Kievan Rus experienced periods of prosperity and expansion, as well as internal strife and external threats. Kievan Rus was a feudal state with a loose system of governance, where regional princes ruled over their territories and paid tribute to the Grand Prince of Kiev. Christianity, particularly the Eastern Orthodox Christianity, was introduced to Kievan Rus from Byzantium and became the dominant religion. Kievan Rus also had cultural achievements, including the development of Old East Slavic language and literature, the construction of grand churches and fortifications, and the establishment of trade links with other European and Asian states. However, Kievan Rus faced challenges such as internal power struggles, invasions from neighboring tribes, and pressure from the Mongol Empire. Overall, the early history of Russia is marked by the emergence of Slavic tribes, the Viking influence, and the establishment of the medieval state of Kievan Rus. It laid the foundation for the subsequent historical developments in Russia, including its expansion, political and cultural evolution, and interactions with neighboring powers. Mongol rule in Russia. Mongol rule, also known as the Mongol invasion or the Mongol domination, refers to the period of time when the Mongol Empire, under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his successors, conquered and ruled over parts of Russia and Eastern Europe. Mongol rule had a significant impact on the history and development of Russia. In 1237, the Mongols, led by Batu Khan, invaded Kievan Rus, which was weakened by internal conflicts and political fragmentation. The Mongols quickly overran many of the major cities of Kievan Rus, including Kiev, and established the Golden Horde, a Mongol Khanate, as a political and economic power center in the region. The Mongols imposed their rule over the conquered territories, including Russia, and established a system of governance known as the Tatar yoke. Mongol rule in Russia was characterized by a combination of political domination, economic exploitation, and cultural assimilation. The Mongols extracted tribute from the Russian princes, who were allowed to retain their local autonomy but had to pay taxes and tribute to the Mongol Khans. The Mongols also imposed their own administrative system, which included Mongol governors known as Baskaks, who ruled over Russian territories on behalf of the Mongol Khans. The Mongols established a system of trade routes, known as the Silk Road, which facilitated economic exchange between East and West. However, the Mongols also imposed heavy taxes and tribute on the Russian population, leading to economic exploitation and hardship for many. Russian nobility adopted Mongol titles and court practices, and Mongol words and phrases were integrated into the Russian language. The Mongols also introduced the practice of using the census for tax collection purposes, which became a permanent feature of Russian governance. Despite the challenges and hardships of Mongol rule, it also had some positive effects on Russia. The Mongols provided a stable political order and protected Russia from external invasions during their rule. The Mongols also facilitated cultural exchange between East and West, exposing Russians to new ideas, technologies, and cultures. Mongol rule in Russia lasted for about 240 years, from the mid-13th to the mid-15th century. In the late 14th and early 15th centuries, Russian princes began to resist Mongol domination and assert their independence. In 1380, the Russian prince Dmitry Donskoy led a successful campaign against the Mongols at the Battle of Kulikovo, which marked the beginning of the decline of Mongol rule in Russia. It influenced the course of Russian history and laid the foundation for subsequent events, including the rise of Moscow as a center of power and the eventual liberation of Russia from Mongol rule. Tsardom in Russia. The rise of the Tsardom in Russia refers to the period of transition from Mongol rule to the establishment of a centralized and autocratic state under the rule of the Tsars, who were the absolute monarchs of Russia. This period marked a significant turning point in Russian history and laid the foundation for the later development of the Russian Empire. One of the key factors that contributed to the rise of the Tsardom was the decline of Mongol rule in Russia. In the late 14th and early 15th centuries, Russian princes began to assert their independence from the Mongols and consolidate their power. One of the prominent princes during this period was Ivan III, also known as Ivan the Great, who ruled the Principality of Moscow. Ivan III expanded the territory of Moscow through military campaigns and diplomatic alliances, gradually subjugating other Russian principalities and consolidating power under his rule. He refused to pay tribute to the Mongols and openly challenged their authority. In 1480, Ivan III successfully resisted a Mongol invasion led by Khan Akhmet, which marked the end of Mongol domination in Russia and the beginning of Moscow's rise as a center of power. Under Ivan III and his successors, Moscow emerged as the political, economic, and cultural center of Russia. The princes of Moscow adopted the title of Grand Prince of all Russia and gradually expanded their authority over other Russian lands, assimilating them into the growing Moscow state. Ivan IV, also known as Ivan the Terrible, was the first to officially use the title of Tsar, which is derived from the Latin word Caesar, to signify the autocratic rule of the Russian monarchs. The Tsars of Russia wielded absolute power and established a centralized and autocratic state. The Tsars also implemented reforms to consolidate their rule and promote the growth of the Russian state, including the development of a professional bureaucracy, the introduction of a new legal code, and the establishment of a standing army. The Russian Orthodox Church played a central role in the consolidation of the Tsar's power, and the Tsars promoted Orthodoxy as the dominant religion of the state. The Tsars also supported cultural and artistic developments, including the construction of grand palaces, cathedrals, and fortifications, and the patronage of Russian arts and literature. The rise of the Tsardom in Russia marked a period of centralization of power, territorial expansion, and cultural development. It laid the foundation for the later development of the Russian Empire, which would become a major European power with vast territories and influence in Eastern Europe and Asia. However, it also led to social, political, and economic challenges, including the growing discontent of the peasantry, the rise of the nobility, and the eventual decline of the Tsardom, which would be followed by the establishment of the Romanov dynasty and the transformation of Russia into an empire. Part 2. Continue. Share your experience and opinion in the comments. For more videos, like, share, and subscribe to this channel.